All right, welcome everyone to Together Tuesdays. We're now in the home stretch of 2021. I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving and looking forward to a great holiday season. I'm lucky enough today to have a couple new faces for you guys. Today we have Chris Johnson with us. Chris is one of our senior technical consultants that really focuses on Azure. Chris, say hello.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody.
Okay, we can hear Chris. That's great. Melissa happens to be on vacation today, so Melissa won't be with us, but we have a brand new member to the team, Abby. Abby is one of our new client success advisors, and I know you're going to be hearing from her a lot. She's really picking up on everything that Microsoft has to offer. Say hello, Abby.
Hey everyone.
So you can tell Abby's a nice Southern girl. I think she's from Arkansas originally. And I think she actually has a Razorback jersey, I think, on right now. So, all right, with that, we've got a couple topics here for you today. Chris is going to be walking through 5 mistakes that companies make when moving or migrating legacy applications or systems into Azure. And this is something that Chris does on a daily basis for hundreds, if not thousands, of our clients already. And then I'm going to be talking about a couple of announcements that were made at Ignite that are brand spanking new, that will add to your Microsoft 365 environment in January, because that's when these things get released, which is Loop and Content.io. And let me just let everybody in here, make sure everybody's getting in the meeting, and they are. Okay, with that, I'm going to hand the microphone over here to Chris, and Chris is going to walk you through the 5 mistakes. And Chris, I'll drive the slides. Just tell me to go next when you want me to.
Okay, cool. Hey, good afternoon again, everybody. As Kevin mentioned earlier, I focus mostly, from a cloud perspective and deal with Azure quite a bit, and we do quite a few migrations and assisting organizations in figuring out what they want to do while they make that journey to the cloud, be it a hybrid or moving any legacy workloads and things of that nature. Um, sometimes we'll dive into an organization that's already decided to start that move, or they have actually moved some resources in there and have come across some issues, and so with that we've got 5 mistakes. There's sometimes more, but these are probably the bigger mistakes that we do see with organizations deciding to move some of these legacy workloads into Azure. Kevin, please.
Okay. Well, I got one
Um,
question for you, Chris. I
please.
know that for a long time, it was migrating workloads that are running in VMware on premise and moving them into Azure. Is that still the same now, or are these more applications running on dedicated hardware?
Yeah, so we can move applications and or workloads that are running in VMware directly into Azure. As a matter of fact, VMware's supported natively in Azure. You can actually run VMware in Azure. So really, no, we can take care of that. It can be applications that are on any type of operating system, legacy operating system. Sometimes we move the entire workload. Sometimes we pick up just the application and modernize it. It really is a case by case basis of how we approach each project.
So it's a lot
Um,
more than just running a utility and streaming things up into Azure.
yes, you can just run a utility. Absolutely. And I'm not going to say that we've never done that. It just depends again on what the organization is looking to do. So, um, and as a matter of fact, I'll address that question right now before I even dive in. So, what if the equipment requires a modem connection? I, I'm not sure what to do about that one, Jason. So, um, I'd say modernize that one for sure. um, so, so some of these, items right here. I mean, waiting too long. That's a big one, right? we'll sometimes get into an organization and they're like, we gotta move these things, now, and get them moving right now. We haven't had a chance to do a proper assessment. Maybe that older legacy system isn't supported by what they're wanting to do inside of Azure. Be it the operating system, or be it that particular application, or whatever. Maybe it's a modem, like Jason was mentioning in chat. But seriously, waiting too long is the biggest mistake that we see, because we want to properly plan, assess, get you cost. Think about what we're going to be modernizing. We don't necessarily need to do a one-to-one migration. Sometimes people think that that's what we need to do, but no. If you have 300 servers on premises, we don't need to move 300 servers into Azure. One big thing that I try to express upon organizations is take advantage of Microsoft. Take advantage of the hardware they provide inside of their data centers, because they do it a lot better than we can. And one example of that is, think about just domain controllers, right? I mean, we've always, for those that know about these, we've always deployed 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 domain controllers, because of that what if, right? What if this goes down? We need to have this type of redundancy, or of course multiple offices and such. If I've got 3 domain controllers, do I need to drop 3 domain controllers in the same region in Azure? I mean, I don't know, maybe not. But the thing is, dropping 3 domain controllers in Azure may be a little bit overkill. Maybe we drop 1 domain controller in Azure. Maybe we drop 2 domain controllers in Azure, and we keep one of those domain controllers off, so we're not paying for Azure spend. And we turn that domain controller on, using some Azure automation once or twice a day to do replication, and then it powers off, so we don't have to pay for that thing constantly. Because really, it's just a domain controller, right? It's just doing some authentication and DNS. Again, every situation is different, but just keep that in mind, that we do have different approaches for how we take these migrations. And waiting too long, absolutely, is probably one of the bigger mistakes we see. Rushing into it is, of course, goes hand in hand with waiting too long, because if we're waiting too long and then all of a sudden we're told, hey, we need to move these things, next week, that is also a danger. All right, moving VMs, moving workloads into Azure, AWS, whatever, that's easy. It is. But taking a step back and actually thinking about exactly how our environment is being configured inside of Azure, networking, security, service endpoints, Azure policy, overall governance, role-based access. I can keep going on and on and on, right? Those are things that we need to truly think about before we even drop a workload into Azure. And rushing into it leaves things exposed. Azure is in the cloud, right? And we don't want to just open up our environment to some sort of mistake from the internet. So definitely not taking a holistic approach. Having continued meetings and a game plan is definitely a mistake that we see.
And Chris, let me ask you a question. Taking advantage of things like as a service, for instance, SQL as a service, and so on, isn't that a big part of the strategy that you use to help reduce the costs of Azure?
Yes. As I mentioned earlier, I'm not a big fan of just seeing what somebody has on premise, saying, okay, well, we're going to move 100 servers into Azure just because you have 100 servers on premises. We definitely want to think about what you're doing, and possibly modernize that stuff, lower the cost, and give you more redundancy, right? Well, I mean, think about that, giving you less cost, but more capabilities and more security. That's always a nice thing. So Azure SQL as a service, that's a great one that we do a lot with. Kubernetes, Azure Kubernetes, and using containers, Kubernetes for orchestration, something we do quite a bit with. Web services, using Azure services for different next gen firewalls, Azure firewalls, web application firewalls, application gateways. Absolutely. Taking those appliances that we're constantly maintaining and turning them into PaaS and SaaS offerings with Azure definitely helps as well.
And there's a lot of things in the Azure store, for instance, firewalls and appliances and things like that, that are absolutely a way to take advantage of Azure, correct?
Absolutely. Yep. And again, some of those appliances that you may have on-prem. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I was on a call earlier. These guys use a lot of Palos on premises, and they don't want to use Azure appliances or Azure networking. They want to use Palos in Azure. Makes sense. Palo and all the other big boys, they deploy next-gen firewalls inside of Azure, so you can have that exact same experience that you're enjoying on-prem and in your data centers inside of Azure.
And it's not always just servers either, right? You do a lot with virtual desktops in Azure too, right?
Yep, we've moved a lot to Azure Virtual Desktop, obviously formerly named Windows Virtual Desktop, and there's actually been quite a few new advances. If you keep up on a lot of the Microsoft roadmaps, Microsoft has given us Azure Active Directory join for our Azure Virtual Desktops. So for those organizations that are really pushing the envelope and really wanting to move away from a traditional Active Directory, we now can join your Azure Virtual Desktop workloads directly to an Azure Active Directory and do centralized administration and management through Endpoint Manager. And we can do all of that stuff without a traditional Active Directory. Microsoft has really been pushing the envelope. There was another big announcement a few days ago regarding that, regarding FS Logics with profiles and things like, which is now supported with that. So Azure Virtual Desktop is definitely something that is extremely popular, utilizing Microsoft's native tools, or we also specialize using Nerdio, which is an add-on for the Azure Virtual Desktop for simplified administration.
All right, well, I'll let you get going. I'm sorry, I keep asking questions, but I really want to know. I mean, this is something I'm sure our audience would want to know too. So
Absolutely.
We'll go on to mistake number 3.
Nope, let's keep going. Yep, the next one's step number 3. Did you move the slide? Did it move?
Mm-hmm.
Slide didn't change for me.
Mine did.
Oh, there it goes. I don't know why it took a second.
Oh, you're in Colorado. Everything runs a little slow out there.
Hey. So mistake number 3, replicating legacy systems to Azure. Once again, that again, all of these kind of go in hand in hand. Microsoft will allow, Server 2000, Server 2003 will run in Azure. They will. They may not be supported, but they'll run. So just keep that in mind as we look and do a review of the on-premises environment. And again, if the organization's in the data center, wherever those workloads are, we go through these things one at a time. We will run reports. We will run baselines. We will find out what you're doing, but we will then come up with a plan to move those things. But the greatest thing is, let's say you have to move a Server 2000 or you have to move a Server 2003 server into Azure. Well, we can move those too. I mean, even though it may not be supported directly in Azure, there are definitely things that we can do. I work with an insurance company that has a lot of older systems, and they do have production systems running on Server 2000 in VMware. And we are talking now about moving and having them run VMware natively on Azure hardware so they can continue to run these Windows Server 2000 VMs and continue to have console access and everything that they've continued to do. These Server 2000, these servers that are running Server 2000 will not have any idea what's happened to them. So keep that in mind, that you can give some of that old hardware, those old operating systems, a little bit of a kick in the pants. We know I'm mentioning Windows a lot, but I think we all know that many organizations run very legacy Linux workloads. Those are the ones I see the most. And a lot of those, again, we can bring those over, run those things natively in Azure, or put them inside of a VMware solution or nested Hyper-V, and those things will run probably a lot faster and a lot more efficient inside of Azure.
In VMware, you could still use Virtual Center, even if you're running in Azure, to manage that whole environment, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Deploy vCenter. If you have a hybrid VMware environment, in multiple locations, you'll see all of that stuff. In Azure, you'll see your Azure VMs, you'll see your Data Center A VMs, Data Center B VMs. You'll see them all inside of there. You can use vMotion, and move things back and forth. Utilizing Azure Arc we can actually do direct monitoring and policy management and governance directly in Azure as well, and be able to see those virtual machines not only in vCenter but also natively in Azure. It's a lot of really cool stuff right now.
So it's like a stretch cluster, just using their hardware.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay. Great. All right.
Yep. Mistake number 4. This one I've seen a few times as well. You have a department that has been accustomed to doing things on premises for quite some time, and maybe they have not really embraced or I guess utilized the cloud as much, based off of just their day to day. Makes sense. And I know I've been in this situation where somebody above me says, hey Chris, we need to do this, just get it in place. and then I go to the documentation and figure it out, right? So doing this though with Azure and or AWS can cost you a lot of money. I can give you countless examples of migrations into Azure where an organization may have storage that may be over provisioned in Azure, or you may have a virtual machine in one region and VMs in another region, and you're doing a lot of sending of traffic across these regions and spending extra money than you don't need to, over provisioning managed disks, under provisioning virtual machines, leaving things open from a security perspective. It happens all the time. I could think of a couple of scenarios just last year where we had to go into organizations that were compromised with malware and the whole encrypting of files and things like that. It's not just security. It's not just cost. It also comes down to just how we manage our Azure environment as a whole. Clutter and documentation, disaster recovery, backing up, all of those things. Again, as I mentioned earlier, you want to take a step back and think about what that environment's going to look like. And I'm sure many of you guys do this already, but whatever we do on premises, how we came up with our environment, our networking and security and all of those things, we want to think about it that same way in Azure, but be even more hypersensitive, because by default, things can be just open, right? And we want to make sure that we close those holes up. We don't leave things open. We use private endpoints when we can, and secure the organization as much as possible.
And automation becomes a big deal. It's something that they haven't had to deal with in their data center, turning off VMs, for instance, to save money in off hours. If you only used a backup server, at night, why you're running it all day long, right?
Absolutely. I am a massive fan of automation, be it Azure Function apps, be it Logic apps, runbooks, whatever this solution calls for. Writing a little bit of a function app with a little bit of code can save the organization a lot of money. I'm sure many of you are very familiar with reservations or reserved instances inside of Azure. And for those that aren't aware, just real quickly, reserved instances is a from a virtual machine perspective, it's a cost that Microsoft would give you, a flat rate, of a cost for a virtual machine, and then you don't have to worry about turning it on or off or anything like that. There's more to it, but that's a high level. But sometimes you don't need to use a reserved instance. As Kevin mentioned, there may be a virtual machine that only needs to be on for 20 minutes a day, 30 minutes a day. Well, there's no way I would recommend putting that in a reserved instance. I would say use automation, power it on when it needs to be powered on, power it off when it needs to be powered off, and call it a day. Same thing with scaling. We do a lot of automation, and do some virtual machine scaling and workload scaling. If you have a lot of logins and people accessing web applications or containers at a certain time, scale that stuff up real quickly. And then when the load starts to die down, scale it back down. No point in paying more money than what's needed.
All right, let's get on to your last one here.
All right, last one. Lack of communication with decision makers. This one I've been seeing actually a lot over the past few months. It's interesting when you either have the folks that write the check to say, hey, we're doing this, and the folks that are actually doing the implementation, they're like, well, I mean, how? Where's how in the world can I do this? I don't have the bandwidth and or maybe the knowledge or this or that, or it happens the other way as well. This is what I see because I do a lot of delivery and implementations and engineering work. I'm working with some skilled engineers, and they're like, well, hey, Chris, this sounds great, but it's very difficult to articulate that to somebody that may not be as technical to truly understand why we need to go this route. I say this to people all the time. If you're trying to get me to compare Azure and AWS and the Google Cloud platform from a dollar and cents perspective straight to what you're doing on-prem, on-prem is going to win all day long. I mean, it really is if you're looking true one-to-one dollars. But when you look at all those other ancillary benefits that you get, from a security perspective, from a redundancy perspective, and I can keep going on and on. The cloud wins all day long, and I think we all understand the importance of it. So, just I would say, as long as we're all on the same page, us as a partner, the higher ups that are actually writing the checks and authorizing these things, the IT department, being very engaged and enthusiastic about putting this stuff into place, which I think a lot of them are. Um, very. I have never worked with an engineer that says, "Hey, Chris, I don't want to go to the cloud." I don't know how long many of you've been doing this, but I have been doing this for many years, and going into data centers and swapping out hard drives is not my idea of a good time any longer. So, many engineers that I work with are quite enthusiastic about going to the cloud. But our goal is to make sure that from the business side that we are helping the organization as much as possible. I tell all IT engineers I work with, you are now a business analyst. The moment you start going to the cloud, you have to be concerned about every button click that you are doing can cost the organization money. And also helping them out from an engineering perspective as well.
And Chris, not everything should go to the cloud, right?
Not everything should go to the cloud. Why in the world would you do that? I mean, if I've got plenty folks that say, we've got this hardware that is out of warranty. We don't want to spend the money in the cloud. It's just a legacy reference server for something. I say, well, do we have to move it? Why not just leave it? You're not paying anything for it. It's already paid for. If you don't care, I don't care, right? So no, not everything has to be moved, and that's just from a cost perspective. But what about latency, right? What happens if you've got your users work in a specific office space and they need to have very quick, low latency access to whatever it may happen to be? Well, that's that as well. That actually is a nice segue to what the question is I see about customers migrating to Azure using ExpressRoute. Yes, we see ExpressRoute a ton, but the gateway generally for Azure that I see is a site-to-site VPN because it's easy to stand up. So organizations will generally stand up a site-to-site VPN. They'll dip their toes in the water, right? They'll put out a workload that's out that needs to be put out there, or maybe it's a new initiative. That's a lot of the times what I see. We've got a new application we need to deploy. This is our chance to really give Azure or AWS a chance to shine. Let's see how this would work. And so then, yeah, one of the first things, Caleb, that we'll do is we stand up a site-to-site VPN, and I try to do it as little cost as possible. I mean, you don't have to stand up a Cisco ISA, or a Palo Alto device inside of Azure. You can just do a regular Azure VPN gateway, costs you $150 a month, and 130, 140, whatever it is. But and do a site-to-site VPN to one location in your data center to at least get you that connectivity, that secured connectivity, so we can drop in a domain controller or do whatever else that's going to be required. That's normally where it starts. But then, as things continue to go, Caleb, the natural progression that happens many times is an express route. Yes, many times they'll leave a VPN the regular site-to-site VPN as a fail-safe, or just in case the express route goes down. But yeah, absolutely.
But if they have an MPLS network already, they might want to consider an express route just to extend what they already have.
No question about it.
Right.
No question. Be it express route directly in Azure, or if you're in Office 365 and you want much faster blazing speed to the Office 365 service applications, do an express route there. It doesn't have to be express route straight to using Azure virtual machines. It could, so either way. Yep.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Chris. We really appreciate it. I know we're coming up here on time, and I wanted to run through just a quick updates of Ignite. Now, you can still ask questions here. Chris will stay on here till the end, and we'll try to answer whatever questions you have as we go here. But as you know, Ignite is really Microsoft's, conference every year, and they have a lot of announcements. I picked 2 of them that I thought were going to be something that would influence your ongoing environment. Microsoft Loop is a brand new application for Microsoft Office, and it really is something that is going to start to give you the flexibility and power to actually share information across multiple applications like Outlook and Dynamics and a whole bunch of other applications that are all in the Microsoft field. So what I thought is I'd go through Loop, and then the other one which is ContextIQ, is another one that I think that that you might want to take advantage of. These are coming out in January, so they aren't even out yet. So I can't even do a live demo for you, but I have a couple of videos here real quick that you'll be able to see. But Loop is basically a bunch of components that basically give you the ability to have your workflow between chat and mail and meetings and different documents that are in your environment already, whether it's in lists in SharePoint or tables in Excel or even SQL, different notes and tasks. All those things can now be shared using Loop amongst all of your application sets, including Teams, including SharePoint, and so on. And just to give you an idea, this is a quick video that they gave us where, as you put information into a table, it gets shared amongst every type of document that you want to link with this, whether it's a database or an Excel spreadsheet or wherever you want this data to go. It's easy to do. You can use a bunch of different applications to get that input into those environments. So Loop is really going to be that conduit that basically hooks everything together so that you're not inputting the same data into multiple places. You can do it in one place. The easiest place to do it, whether it's Teams, whether it's an Excel spreadsheet, whatever it might be. And you'll see that they basically give it to you in 3 different areas. And I don't know if I put this in here, but you can do it in tables. You can do it inside of different types of teams where you're actually, putting it. If you're in a meeting and you have a form that you published inside of a Teams meeting and you're getting feedback from the audience, all that input can now be pushed into whatever documentation, whatever type of centralized location that you want to use. And it really is a great tool. I saw it live when they were doing it as part of the classes. We haven't been able to get our hands on it yet, but we're going to have it here sometime this week, I'm hoping, so we could start playing with it and then be able to help you guys use it, pulling information. For instance, you can see this one is coming with Loop components. You can pull information from Dynamics, you can pull it from your Active Directory. So if you're looking for people, it brings it up in a real easy format for you guys to use it. Loop Pages is basically a canvas that you can use to organize all this information that you're getting, whether it's links, data, any type of connection to different collaboration pages in SharePoint. So Pages will allow your people to work together, on marketing ideas, for instance, here, or on documents or projects, and really give you that feel of working together, even though in a lot of cases nowadays, we're not in the same building, even in the, even in the same city. This gives you that ability to really free form your ideas and help projects move along much, much quicker. In workspaces, these are shared spaces, almost like a team that allows a group of people, especially on these projects that are really high visibility, gives you the ability to track progress, almost like a project light, to do different things. So if you have projects out there that you're working on with tasks that are assigned to people, you can actually get a great feedback of where the project is, who's keeping up, who's up to speed, how you're working on milestones and so on. Great little thing to use here inside the workspaces project or loop that's in here. And then once you start tying in ContextIQ, this allows an editor to take that information, whether it was in Outlook, whether it was in SharePoint, and now start to put some analytics behind that and give you some context of what this information means. So you could see that, whether it's in Teams like we're doing it right here, so you can give it context-based information that comes from all of that information that is now part of your environment in Office 365, and really start using that information instead of just having it out there. So really great way to do this. You can dig into files, and digging for files was the #1 barrier that people said once they were put in this hybrid state that we've been in for the last almost 2 years now. So ContextIQ will help you minimize those distractions, help you find the information much, much quicker. And we're going to be, once this gets released, we're actually going to be doing a full session on this. We're going to do a webinar on both these products to try to give you more context. I just wanted to give you guys an idea of what's coming. You'll see this, like I said, starting in January is the release date that I saw. And they're saying 2022, but I really did see the January date just the other day. So all this stuff is coming. So we are having our next one here on the 14th. We're going to be talking about Loop and Merge and Mesh, which we talked about Loop, but we're Merge and Mesh is 2 more applications that are going to take that collaboration and take it to the next level. And then I believe that Melissa is going to be talking about Inscape assign and account information, and we'll be able to show you how that works on our next one. I know I'm running just a little bit late here, but Chris, you got anything you want to mention here at the end?
No, I don't. Well, there were also it's funny you mentioned a few things from Ignite. There were quite a few big major announcements from an Azure perspective at Ignite as well. And if I knew you were going to be mentioning that, I would have been a little bit more prepared.
Oh, but, that's okay, Chris. We'll do another one about Azure Ignite. That's okay.
Yeah, there was quite a few, and I mean, even some items that I've actually started to roll out. I'm trying to think if there's something off the top of my head I can mention. Okay, here's a couple. I'm not sure how many organizations out there are running SQL. Microsoft is now doing multi-subnet support inside of Azure for always-on availability groups and failover cluster instances in SQL. For those that run it in Azure or on premises, for far too long, if you wanted to deploy a highly available SQL environment in Azure running on virtual machines, you had to deploy an Azure load balancer. Increased latency, increased the configuration. It was just a pain. We no longer have to do that. We now have native support for multi subnets inside of Azure. They also announced the VPN, and it went general availability just recently. VPN Gateway NAT, where we can actually NAT our virtual machines behind an Azure VPN Gateway. Now we can. It makes the site-to-site VPNs much easier with Azure. Once again, for those that have done this before, we know that if you have multiple offices, you don't overlap your subnets, right? If you have 192.168.1.0/24 in one office, you do 0.0/24 in another, whatever. You just don't overlap those addresses. However, sometimes people have made some mistakes and they have had to have some overlapping addresses, especially when they've started to extend their environments into Azure. Well, we now can get around that using NAT on the Azure VPN gateway. That one was just announced and that went general availability last week as well. Yeah, I'll come up with quite a few more in an organized fashion, but those were some of the big ones that I just off the top of my head came up with. But
well, that's the thing about the cloud. They'll always come up with things, won't they? I mean,
yeah,
they're always trying to make improvements. And you know, the funny thing is, they get a lot of these ideas from people that are using it every day, like our audience. So
yeah,
if you have things that you're looking for, things that you want to see, let us know. Let your success managers like Abby and Melissa, myself or Chris know. And we pass along to Microsoft stuff all the time that 6 months from now we'll probably see happen if enough people ask for it.
yep, absolutely. Yeah, it happens all the time where they do come up with something brand new. I'm gonna leave you with one more thing, because this one is such a simple thing, but it was such a welcome development. They have this new thing called the virtual machine selector inside of Azure. It's now just a website, and it allows you to easily figure out what virtual machine size and operating system and region that you want to deploy a virtual machine to. For those that have deployed a virtual machine in Azure before, we have all gone in Azure and you figure out, okay, I'm going to click through here and click here and what size, all right, what is an E series, what's a B, what's a D, there's so many. This virtual machine selector, which is not only a web page, it'll give you cost, it'll let you know what you need to do from a redundancy perspective, what size, what it's recommending. If you ever struggle with these things, right there, that's also a brand new web page. Really love it. So.
The one thing that you showed me was, you deploy a VM and then they come out with version 2 or version 3 of that same VM, and with different pricing, with different processors and so on, right?
Yep, absolutely. Every so often, Microsoft will release a new version of that same virtual machine. Cost will either be the same or lower. So if you're running a DS2 V2, which is a virtual machine in Azure, they may release a DS2 V3, and the cost may be a little bit less. And all it takes for you to do is press a button. And well, a reboot of the virtual machine too. Obviously, you want to plan that, but regardless, keep in mind of that. I mean, we have organizations where we've saved thousands and thousands of dollars by just going from an older version to a newer version. Nothing else has changed. So, and we keep a close eye on that stuff for you. It's really like the stock market; it's constantly moving. But keep in mind of all that stuff. Use that VM selector. Keep up on some of the Azure updates, and obviously, reach out to us, and we'll continue to be a partner as best as we can.
Chris, thanks a lot for jumping in today. We really appreciate it. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, whatever it is. Same thing to our audience, and we'll see you next week on Tuesday. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.